Hi guys, I don't know about you, but it's pretty difficult to come up with a controversial topic to discuss for the prolonged period of 7 to 8 minutes. But instead of, talking and blabbering about facts, I just kind of wanted to tell a story. And if you want to listen to me, I'd say you sit along, grab your best drink. I have some water here myself. Nice. And then just listen along. I'm Ruben, right? And I was born and raised in Colombia, and I had the fortune to live with a lot of powerful women in my life. And I say that because my dad and usually like all other like male figures would be out and about just working, right? And like the role that I kind of understood growing up was always of the male was the one working, providing for the house, giving enough for the family to eat, to clothe themselves, and to survive. And then the women would be the ones at home taking care of the children, like being the ones in charge of the house, and so on and so on. And I thought of this as normal, right? um, I came to Canada and I realized that there's a lot more independence with women down here, or up here, I guess, if we're looking at it geographically, well, English. But there was a lot more of independence here, and there was a lot more movements for feminism and stuff like that. So from a very early young age, I was able to appreciate the support and the efforts that the women in their life around me, like my mom, my grandma, my other grandma, and like aunties, and so on, right? The big list would do for me and for their families, and for the people that they cared about. So from a very young age, I was able to have a lot of respect for women. And so when I came here and I learned about feminism, I was able to interpret it in my own way and still respect it and still wish for the better of it, so may say. So one thing that was shocking to me was learning about all the negative things that Latin women have to deal with at home. And so me coming here at the age of 10, I didn't really see a lot of the negatives per se. Growing up, I always saw the positives. I always saw the happy smiles, the good times, and so on and so on. But I never really did see the tragic side of what it's like being a woman in Latin America. And so if I take you on a step back to the colonizing ages, where the Spaniards came and colonized Latin America with like Christopher Columbus and all those figures of like the conquistadores and all that stuff, they created this figure of machistas, or I guess the closest English translation that I have is like toxic masculinity. So what that kind of created was like an evolutionary effect where across different generations, the male figure would always use this toxic masculinity, this machista attitude towards their women for a sense of survival. And it kind of correlates a little bit to what I was saying before with the male figure working and so on and so on, and providing for the family and blah, blah, blah. And then the woman figure just kind of like chilling at home, taking care of the family, right? Like they wouldn't really want freedom for the women. And I kind of unconsciously learned that because that's the way we naturally grew up, right? Everybody in the community around me was kind of growing up with similar values at different stages. And so we all perceived this as normal. And of course, coming here to Canada and seeing the cultural shock, it was very much a surprise. That's the best thing I can describe it as, because it's nothing that I saw. It's nothing that I honestly even imagine those powerful women in my life like living with it, because it just looks so tragic. It got to points where the government in those areas of Latin America was so, I don't want to say corrupt, because in some areas it is, but it doesn't give as much attention to the women as it does to the men. And so what we saw was that in different generations, victims of machistas, or victims of these toxic masculine figures, would be taken advantage of, and would be, I don't even know how else to describe it, man. Like, it's just so sad to even like think about right now. But things such as rape, things such as like unconsensual sex, things such as like catcalling, or like even creating some sort of scare tactics, right? Or like from the males to the females, right? And then the females wanting to like speak out about it, right? And bring their voices out, and just them not being heard is probably like the saddest thing to internalize, because it's like, yo, there's a problem going on, but you choose to listen to not the victim, right? You choose to listen to the perpetrator, I think that's the word, rather than the victim. And like, a change needs to happen, right? And so what I believe in is in support for the feminist movement that's going on in Latin America. One of them is called the Ni Una Menos movement, which stands for Not One More. And I believe it originated in Argentina, and it was a movement of women coming together, either physically through like marches on the streets, and or electronically through hashtags on Twitter or like social media, right? And so what ended up happening was that through women connecting and uniting, and saying, F the government, we're gonna take control of this ourselves, and really standing up for what they believe in and wanting to create some sort of change, they were able to connect with one another, share their stories, share their insights, share their voice. And I found it impactful, because I found it as like the correct stepping stone for a better future. And honestly, something that still like baffles me, I'd say, is that the government is taking its sweet time to progress, right? But thanks to things like I mentioned, social media, like in platforms like Twitter, Instagram, just sharing the hashtag of like the Ni Una Menos with like their story would give a lot of detail to, who this perpetrator is, or to who this person that attacked, XYZ in this specific community in Argentina, or even like anywhere else, because this movement not only started in Argentina, but it spread throughout Latin America as well. And so what I see crazy is that previous generations would have, the perpetrators get away with a lot of the things that they committed. And it kind of created this psychological effect where, growing up, I remember I was taught like to not really show that much emotion. And so I think, if I'm connecting the dots correctly, it kind of created like a bottle glass effect. I don't even know if you guys are familiar with it, but it's kind of like when you fill, like, imagine like a glass of water, you fill it up with enough water, and then, at some point that water has to go somewhere. And so imagine that water being stress, and imagine that glass being you. So much stress is overflowing the person that at some point they might just break out into anger, and that anger is then targeted to whoever's at home. And unfortunately, who is at home is their wife, or their kids, or anybody really. And so that aggressive attitude of the machista, that's always tired, that's always like, taught not to show emotions, is then exhausted from all this stuff that they're dealing with, right? That they take out their anger on someone else, and it just creates like, this violent loop. And I know I'm getting like a little bit on the longer side, but I feel like in order to prevent this sort of drastic effect for the future, I'd say we, at least the Latin American community, should include some sort of educational system to help men deal with their emotions and help women be heard, and that way create a better change for the future. At least that's my opinion on it. Anyways, glad that you were able to listen along. Hope you have a great day. See you.